Aloha, namaste. This is Alexis with Radha Home Yoga, and I'm here to talk about our new moon we have coming up here in just a less than 24 hours, actually, from when I'm filming this. We have our new moon in the star of Swati, and this is right in the middle of sidereal Libra. And this particular new moon cycle also marks a festival of lights, which is called Diwali. And this is a very auspicious time. It's one of the most important holidays in India. And it is when we're lighting candles or lighting these lanterns, these clay lanterns, and the streets will be covered in light, and people will have all sorts of ways of lighting a candle in the time of year where we're moving to the darkest part of it, right? Where we're moving to the longest day of the year in the Northern Hemisphere. And the significance from an astrological perspective is pretty strong because we have our sun, our power, our light, our source of light, our consciousness in its state of debilitation in sidereal Libra. So I know in the Western system, this is a Scorpio moon, and people really love Scorpio moons. For some reason, there's a dark and stormy nature that people feel charged by. But in the Vedic system, we look at each planet in a different sign as how does it operate? What is the intelligence that that planet's operating with? And the sun does not operate with intelligence in Libra because it's where we are giving our power to others. We're deciding to follow leadership based on what other people think and what other people believe. We're rather than taking a direct download from our own connection to source, we're like, oh, what's your connection to source? Maybe I'll follow what you're doing. So we have a much depleted capacity to really shine in our highest light and to really stand in our power, our true power. And to have any authority. And then the moon is not debilitated in Libra, but it is debilitated in Scorpio right after, which is why I think it's funny that people love Scorpio moon so much in the Western system, because there's a tumult, there's a chaos, there's a quality of fear, and it is not always real. Like it's not like Saturn's fear that's very much based on things that actually will likely go wrong, like death and old age. But this is a kind of fear that's like anything that could possibly happen. Scorpio is the natural 8th house. Libra is the natural 7th house. The 7th house is where we are in relationship to others. The 8th house is where we have to reckon with the fact that now that we have these people we're in relationship with, we could lose them. They could leave us, they could die. They will die one day, just like we're going to die. We have to deal with the lack of control we have when we are vulnerable to other people. And so this link between the 7th house and the 8th house is quite strong. And in this particular cycle, we have the new moon where the sun and moon come together in Libra, in sidereal Libra. And then the moon moves quickly, right? The sun will stay in sidereal Libra for 2 more weeks, really, because we have a little less than 2 weeks, because we had our full moon when the sun first moved into Libra, right? In this cycle, we started with the full moon before we even had the new moon. So this is a cycle we're beginning of Libran things where we're compromising, where we're giving and taking in what we feel should be equitable amounts, where we're very concerned with that equity. We're very concerned with the balance. We're very concerned with what other people think. We're very concerned with being fair. These are Libran qualities. Also involved in the Libran world is art, beauty, sensuality. Do we look beautiful? Are we, do other people look beautiful? Is the world around us attractive? Maybe we might make art or beautify our home, or try to bring connections together that maybe have fallen out. When the sun is in Libra, it's again debilitated. It's a place where our power is not in its strength. But when the moon is in Libra, which it is for this new moon, we are feeling that our connection to others, our intimate connection to others, not necessarily an intimate partner, but that part of us that's vulnerable and available to really connect with someone beyond niceties, on a deeper level, is in a state of heightened awareness around this concept of fairness and polite. And are we giving and getting equal amounts? Is everyone doing their share? That's a big theme with a Libra moon. Another big theme is this concept of individuating ourselves. So Swati, the star that this new moon is in, is ruled by Rahu, which is the north node of the moon. It's where things are very airy, very dispersive, super delusional. There's a part where we can't tell what's true and what's not true. And it's also ruled by the deity Vayu, who is the god of the wind, which is obviously quite airy also. So there's this dispersive quality, and Libra's an air sign where we are, putting ourselves in all these different places, and we're seeing all these imagined things that keep us from what we really truly want or need to do in our lives. And so we have this sword in Swati, and we're swatting at all these sort of imaginary things that are keeping us from our own strength and our own capacity to guide ourselves through any given situation. Right? We're always seeking, what is other people doing? What are they doing? As if following the crowd has ever worked, right? As if other people have ever had the right idea. I mean, anyone who's lived any number of years on Earth, so maybe not a teenager, but anyone past their 20s should probably recognize that, generally speaking, following other people is not really a good way to go, right? Your life will quickly plummet if you're spending it following others, because others don't know any more than you. Right? Others don't hold information you don't have within yourself, and others are probably making their decisions off of other people too, right? When you sort of follow a crowd, you can imagine everyone in that crowd is following a crowd too, but who is really leading this crowd, right? Where's the leadership? Where's it coming from? If it's always being sold out to other people, then no one's really taking ownership of where the direction is and where things are going and why they're going that way. And of course, there usually will be somebody taking some kind of leadership, and more often than not, they have some kind of, agenda personal that serves them. And they have caught onto the wind, or they've caught into the wind of things and get the flow going in the direction that they want it to go. And the rest is very easy, because people do really have a tendency to give away their power. And the reason people want to give away their power is because they want to be accepted. It's one of the most fundamental fears we have. It's quite primal, right? We were at one point very dependent on having other people around us. If we didn't have other people around us, we wouldn't survive. And I think as a woman, I can still understand that, especially in my chosen life where I live closer to nature, and have a child, that it's quite true. I won't survive if there aren't other people around. I couldn't survive by myself in the jungle. I need the help of other people. And certainly, being alone with a child it can be frightening, and you need other people who also have children so that you can connect with those people and not be alone, not be stuck alone taking care of your child. So the idea that we need others is fundamental. And the problem is that we're so afraid of losing others that we often sell ourselves out. And when we do that, what we find is we don't actually have true friendships, or we don't have true relationships with people. What we have are people who liked the fact that we were willing to push our own boundaries or fold completely on our own boundaries to do their bidding. So again, we find that there is a source of power somewhere, and that source of power is trying to actually manipulate situations to work for them. So this is the struggle with Libra. The struggle with us wanting to connect and wanting to have relationships with other people is often we give more than we should, and not what we even should, if we want to have true healthy relationships where they're actually based and founded in honesty, integrity, and real vulnerability. So this cycle is one where we're facing our darkest times, right? It's the darkest time of year. We're moving from that equinox to the solstice. In the northern hemisphere, it is the fall equinox and the winter solstice. So we're fading to dark. I live in Hawaii. It's not going to probably get too dark here, but it never gets that light either because we're close to the equator. But people who live farther north will have dramatic decrease in the amount of daylight they have, right? And will be shrouded in dark for much of the time, a greater percentage of the time. Things won't grow in cold climates. The trees will be barren, and bears and squirrels and things like that will hibernate. So this is a time of year when we're going inside ourselves. And our external source of power, the sun, is actually less for us. Again, in the northern hemisphere, in the southern hemisphere, that's not the case, but we actually have less sun available to us. And so we need to create that light from within. We need to be able to find the part of our luminaries, right? The debilitated sun, the debilitated moon. The sun is our, again, our power, our source of consciousness. The moon is our mind and our emotions, our psyche. And we need to find the source of our power and the source of our connection, right? That stability in our mind that we don't get when the moon is in Scorpio. And we need to find it within. We need to light a candle within ourselves. And there are, like I said, the practice of lighting candles for Diwali is signifying of this. All of these Indian holidays are based around astrological timing of the new moon and the full moon more often than not. The holiday will come on a new moon or a full moon. And the thing that's being represented through the mythology or through the verbology or through the different traditions and practices and rituals that take place is reflective of what the astrology is showing. And what the astrology is showing is this state of our luminaries being dim and not having light. And so what we need is to find the light within, to be the candle, to be our own inner sun. This is the path. When we're faced with something that's really debilitated, really challenged, we have to face it and we have to walk through it and deal with it. And so that's our charge for this month. And it's important because we're moving into our final eclipse series of the new moon and the full moon. The solar eclipse is on the new moon, and that's actually going to be second in this. The full moon is going to come first, and that will be our lunar eclipse. And that I think is November 17th. The solar eclipse is December 4th. So these are our final two eclipses in this Taurus Scorpio axis. I'm actually going to share my screen so that we can see what I'm talking about. We have Rahu still here in Taurus and Ketu in Scorpio. And these are the nodes of the moon, right? Rahu is the north node. It's a big head with a mouth just taking in whatever it can without discernment and without the wisdom of past experience. Ketu is all that past experience, all that wisdom, headless, serpentine, form that ends in a tail. And it's all that digested material, all that information from previous lifetimes, from early childhood, and no engagement, no head, nothing to engage in the world, nothing to take in anything more, and really no interest. That's the most important part of K2. It's such a blind spot because it's where we don't want to look. It's where we're sort of disgusted and like, I've already been there. I've already done that. I've already seen that. But yet there's something we missed. And so this is our opportunity to really find what we missed, because the last set of eclipses, the planetary pileup was in Taurus. So it was a new moon in Taurus, and with all those planets there. So the heavy energy was there on the new moon, and the heavy energy on this cycle is going to be in the new moon again, but now it's switched. The full moon will be in Taurus and the new moon will be in Scorpio, and these planets will be over here. So we're going to see that pile up. And what we need to reckon with in this cycle, this new moon cycle, is not just the debilitation of the sun and the moon. But the fact that the moon is, first of all, a new moon means the moon is already in its state of like its malefic state. It's in its state where it's low energy. When the moon is new, it is shadowed by the sun. We don't see it, right? It's a dark moon. And likewise, our mind and our emotions go to dark. So we are more meditative, more quiet, more internalized, less social, less engaged, less, less energy in general. Women often bleed on the new moon. That used to be very much true. Now people are on a lot of hormones and there's all kinds of, disrupting factors in the environment. But in the past, in the olden days, in yesteryear, women mostly bled on the new moon. It was the more common way to bleed. And this is also a process of shedding and letting go and wanting to spend time alone and not be super active. Now, a new moon in Libra will make us feel kind of social, right? Because it's Libra, and Libra is where we're social, and Libra is where we burn ourselves out to please somebody else. Oh, but we made this plan, so I still have to show up for it, even though I'm really feeling tired and I don't want to show up for it. Libra is where we have a tendency to sign up for more than we actually want to do. Or will be able to do when the time comes. So then we move into this moon being in Scorpio, and in that first section where it's actually going to be debilitated, and it's going to be joined Ketu. And I can actually even show us exactly sort of when this will happen. Well, that's pretty close, 3 degrees, 7 degrees. I don't need to even change the time. So when the moon is new, we have that darker state. It is going to be after the sun. I mean, after the moon and sun came together. So it'll be the first steps forward. Each phase of the moon, it's waxing or waning, and each titi or each phase that happens moves us towards the one that the whole paksha. So in a Krishna paksha, which we're in at this moment that I'm speaking, it's moving to dark. Once the moon and sun come together, then it moves to a full moon, right? It's waxing at that point. So it's an optimism that comes with waxing. There's a hopefulness that comes with waxing, even in those first couple days where the moon is still very dark, but there's still that darkness. There's still that state of lack of engagement. There's still a place where we are more likely to feel maybe even depression because of that lack of zest for life, thoughts, mind, emotions. So there's that quality. But then Ketu also is sort of a depressant, because Ketu is, again, where we're not engaged in the world. And it's where we're disgusted, where we've been there, where we've done that, where we have this sort of, old person saying, oh, it should be like this, it should be like that, or, feeling this sense of shaming or disgruntledness. And the laser focus of Ketu, where Rahu is dispersive and spreads things out like air, as I mentioned when I was talking about the sun being in Swati, the moon is, Ketu is like laser focused. It's more like a microscope. So rather than dispersing, it's finding, it's pinpointing, it's exacting, it's finding that exact place where it's exactly wrong. And hopefully it's in an effort to heal the karma that is coming to a close, because Ketu is where we're closing old karma. Rahu is where we're opening up new karma. So it makes sense, that dispersive quality and that laser sharp focus. The laser sharp focus is necessary to find whatever we missed, because there is a reason why we're in this cycle and we have something to learn. We didn't learn everything. We don't know it all. We actually are missing some key element that will free us on that end and allow us to open up the new karma on the opposite end of the spectrum, the opposite house, the opposite area of our life. And we can only do that if we unlock the key in wherever K2 is, wherever the south node is. So these solar eclipses, this new moon eclipse with K2, it's like a closure, right? It's an opportunity to heal something and really find what that is that needs to be healed in whatever area of your life Rahu and Ketu are. And if you don't already know this and you want to know before the eclipse, I have a report that goes out when you sign up for my newsletter. And it's Rahu and Ketu in Scorpio Taurus for all 12 signs. There's actually 2 other reports that you'll also get: Jupiter in Capricorn, Jupiter back in Capricorn for all 12 signs, and Mars combust for all 12 signs, because Mars, we can see, is also in Swati, right? Close tied to the sun. Combust means that a planet is so close to the sun that its rays are being burned up by the sun, are being overwhelmed by the sun. Now, this is a combust Mars with a debilitated sun, right? It's a sun that's not have a lot of power to begin with. So you would think, well, maybe it doesn't have as many rays to burn anything up. That's not actually the case, because when these planets, especially Mars and the sun, these fiery masculine planets, are in debility, they actually become more angry. They're frustrated. They're frustrated that someone else is taking their power when in fact they're giving it away, right? It's ourselves. And this is something I actually wrote about a lot in the written part of this report. Power is not actually something we can even give away, right? This is sort of a false view of power, that we can give it to people. And if power can be given, it can be taken, right? That's not real power. Power is not something that's bestowed and sort of taken and given, or, you know, any of these other ways we pretend it is in our society. Power is actually inherent. We all have that. We all have the sun shining over our heads, and the sun is actually there, regardless of where the earth has turned and how well we see it. Just like I say, this is northern hemisphere fading to the winter solstice. In the southern hemisphere, it's getting brighter. You know, in the southern hemisphere, in a different part of the earth, people are enjoying more sun. Now, we live in a very a society that has had its collective story very much told by certain voices. So, for example, I lived in Argentina for a short while in college, and I was there during this time of year, and it was summer, right? It was getting to be warm. It's getting to be summer. And it was still Christmas. Christmas is still coming, because December 25th is that Gregorian date that has been attached to this time of year as Christmas. So there's still all these decorations and songs being sung and everything that have this sort of snowy Christmas theme, despite the fact that it's full on summer and not snowy or Christmassy at all. So the storyline that we're captured with in our world is quite different than the reality. And astrology is actually a science, and we see things from how they are, not how they how we want them to be, or whatever story we've been told our whole lives about that. So the perspective is everything, because that's how we're seeing things. We're seeing things from our perspective on Earth. That's why the location of where you were born is important, because it indicates from where you were getting this planetary energy coming to you, literally incarnating you in this moment, in this time. And if you were born in Argentina, it's going to be different than if you were born in New York or London. So we have to be aware of what we're actually talking about. And it's not just sort of this airy-fairy floating terms that people like to throw around, who kind of maybe dabble in astrology but don't really understand it. It's actually very precise, and there's a lot of very specific things that are happening at any given time. So back to this Mars and Sun conjunction or combustion. Mars is also not in good dignity in Libra. When Mars is in Libra, we really do blame other people for our lack of discipline. We think we're not getting up every day and doing our yoga practice maybe, or we're not really showing up to work and getting every single thing done every night because we were out at night, maybe on a date or at a party that our friends had that we didn't even really feel like going to, but we were invited to it and we said we had to go. It's a time when we sell ourselves out. Our action, our discipline, and our courage are selfish. They are things that we do with ourselves, for ourselves. When we don't do them for ourselves, we start putting the blame on other people. You're wrong. You did it wrong. I'm angry at you. You made me not have my discipline, right? That's the theme. And we don't even necessarily say things like that so consciously, but that's what we feel inside. We feel resentment towards all the people we've been giving our time to. We've been giving our much needed energy towards, because our energy is less. It's less because of the time of the year. And it's less because Mars and the sun, fire signs, don't want to be in an air sign. They don't want to be in this sort of, floaty realm of like dispersive, could go anywhere. Maybe it's this way. Maybe it's this way. I don't know. Who cares? Let's think about it some more and talk about it some more. Air signs are very annoying for these fire planets, especially Libra, where it's all about, can it be fair? Can it be equal? Can it be the same? It's like, no, it never will be, and so long as we stand here parsing about it, we will not get what needs to get done. Right. And so the energy of combustion, which is that Mars feels so close to the sun and so hot that it's like the fuse is shorter and our anger comes out quicker, is sort of exacerbated actually by being in this placement. But because it's Libra, we like pretend we're not angry. Because it's Libra, there's this like, instead of just coming out and saying it, letting it blow up and go over, there's this quality of like sort of passive aggressive, you maybe kept me from doing what I'm going to do, but I'm not really going to say that, but I'm going to kind of punish you anyway. Whatever this sort of way that we do things that is not direct and clear, and is not owning what our own part in something is. This is what can come up with this Mars Sun combustion right now. Anger at people that really haven't done anything wrong. It's all us. We put our own energy wherever we choose to put it. And if we didn't get up and do our, morning ritual, and we instead chose to give our time to somebody else, that's on us, because we are the ones who have to be the timekeepers for ourselves and the gatekeepers of our energy. Mercury is also here in the early degrees, and Mercury does do really well in Libra. This is where we want to compromise in our communication. We don't want to be like, this is the way things are and this is how it is. We want to be like open to hearing other ideas, to other information coming in, to facts being different than we think they are. We want to be open to have an exchange of conversation. We don't want to be militant with our communication because we don't know everything. In fact, we don't know much, especially if our sun and Mars are in this state, especially the sun, if our direct connection to source is so crooked and going through other people. And if our Jupiter is also debilitated, and I spoke a lot about this 2 weeks ago for our full moon, our Jupiter and sun being debilitated and Mars being in such poor dignity and combust, we have our masculine planets, the places where we take care of ourselves. We take care of our own side of the street so we even have anything to offer to anyone else. Those are all in poor dignity right now. And as a result, our beliefs might not be very sound. They might be based in fear. Our power is coming through other people. Our action, we're acting in ways that help others rather than helping ourselves. All three of these things set us up for a situation where we are not taking care of our own selves. But communication, Mercury, is one place where we can be effective. But unfortunately, that alone is not really enough because Mercury in Libra is also overcompromising. I mean, it's a positive dignity. It's considered good dignity, but it's still overcompromising. It's a place where we are compromising more than we need to with our words because we don't want to rock the boat. But deep down, you can bet we actually kind of want to rock the boat because we're actually feeling pretty mad. We're feeling like, oh, I've got my sword, I'm in Swati, I'm trying to individuate, and everybody else is keeping me from doing that, and all these imagined things are keeping me from being my best self, when in fact, we are keeping ourselves from being our best self. So then our language can have these short, abrupt bursts as well because of the Mars there. So there can be little flares that come through just due to the proximity of Mars. But overall, Mercury in Venus's sign of Libra is one that is wanting to keep peace, wanting to keep harmony. And that is the overriding feeling we have when any planets are in Libra, is we want to keep the peace. We want people to be happy. So I'm going to go back to our actual time that we have, our actual new moon time, which is 11:14 a.m. in Hawaii time. So we're GMT minus 10. We don't have daylight savings time or anything like that affecting us. So we're about 15 and a half, I think it's 15 and a half hours from India in Hawaii. So our new moon is November 4th, but it is 11:14 a.m. when we would be experiencing this. And the whole festival is actually a 5-day affair. So there's 2 days before, there's 1 day in the middle, and then there's 2 days after. And the 1 day in the middle is Amavasya, which is the TT we're actually in right now as I'm filming this. And again, it's full on Thursday in India on the 4th, but here in Hawaii, we're set back so far that it's actually partially in Wednesday. But this day, the Amavasya day, is the day of Lakshmi Puja. It's a day when we honor the goddess of the sign of Libra, of the sign of the planet Venus, who brings us grace and gratitude and abundance and fertility and love and kindness and generosity and the capacity to raise up our desire. So taking our desire, which is a human experience and not a negative one, not a bad one, but oftentimes our desire is very self-focused, right? What we want, what I want. And then maybe we're willing to give somebody what they want if they'll give us what we want, right? Maybe we can make a deal, we can cut a deal, because Libra is a merchant sign. It's an air sign where there's always a deal being made. It's always back to that fairness. But in with Lakshmi, we're able to rise up above that kind of tit for tat, like you give me, I give you sort of thing. And we're able to rise above certainly our selfish part of desire, where it's only about our own desires. That's all we care about. And we're able to elevate ourselves to a place where we see how much we get when we give. Not when we give like we're giving with the Mars and the sun here, or even the moon, where we're giving more than we want to give. We're giving people time we need for our own exercise or our own sadhana, where we're giving people power over things they shouldn't have power over, authority over things they shouldn't have authority over, or with our moon, where we're not really happy that we're giving so much, where we feel like we feel a little bereft, like I'm giving, and why aren't they giving back? These are all forms of giving that are not actually in the heart giving. Right? This is when our generosity is actually tied to something we want to get on the other end, and we're not getting enough of that, or what the form of it we want, or we're not getting what we want in return. So we end up feeling burnt out and unhappy and disgruntled and feeling like, well, we're not getting a return on our investment, essentially. What Lakshmi can bring us to is a quality beyond that, where we recognize that we give just out of the pureness of our own heart, just out of wanting to give. And we give in ways that feel good to us, in ways that resonate for us. You give to specifically charities or organizations or causes that you care about, right? When you give to a cause you care about, you don't walk away going, oh, they didn't give me anything. This calendar they gave me or whatever isn't good enough. You don't really care, because you didn't even need the calendar. You weren't doing it for the calendar. You were giving to the organization, and whatever they gave you something, and maybe you even refuse that thing because you don't need it. But you're giving because it's something you care about. Well, that's what Lakshmi reminds us of. She reminds us that we can float above the fact that we're not appreciated, or we're not valued the way that maybe we should be for what we're doing, or that we're not getting back what we think we're giving. Because if we take care of ourselves, if we do our own need, our daily sadhana, whatever that looks like for you, your daily practice that you do, whether that's surfing, whether that's yoga, whether it's meditation, whether it's chanting, whatever that looks like for you, whether morning walk, with your dog, that practice is what brings you back to yourself, brings you your strength, your courage, your sense of action, direction, discipline, your capacity to say no to other people. And then when you stand in your light and you know what truth is, or you know what's right, or you follow your own inner guidance rather than the guidance of sort of all these other people, then you're strong enough within yourself to have reservoirs to offer to other people. And at that point, anything you do for anyone else, or anything you give to anyone else, is coming because you had a surplus, not because you were expecting something in return. If you need something in return, you need to communicate that, as Mercury can show us. You need to say, you know what I really need right now is this. This is the thing I need. And then see where you can get that need filled, who can fill that need, where you can get that need filled, how you can get that need filled. So that's a really important thing to understand, that when we want something, we don't manipulate other people to give it to us by doing something similar for them that maybe they don't want, or by doing and doing and doing and doing and running ourselves ragged and then being like, well, why aren't you helping me now? That's not how we get what we want in life or what we need. We first of all recognize what it is we want and need, and we express that. And maybe whoever we express it to says, I don't have that to give. But that's okay, because then okay, that person doesn't have that to give. Well, maybe this person has that to give, and you can keep going down the line. So another issue we have with Mars, specifically in Libra, is pushing boundaries. Because Libra is where we're nice and where we're kind, Mars in Libra can be pushing past people's generosity. Are you sure you can't give me that? Are you sure you don't have extra to spare? Oh, you sure you can't come do this with me? So while we are responsible for keeping our own side of the street clean, right? We are responsible for making sure that we hold our own boundaries. We're also responsible for not being pushy and for hearing, listening, and honoring other people's boundaries. So when somebody, says no, it's our responsibility to say, okay, thank you for expressing that. Thank you for telling me your no. And now I can move on and see if somebody else is a yes, rather than standing there and trying to keep working that same person for the thing that you want to get. So that's a lesson also that we'll learn in this Mars period, where we, generally speaking, people who have Mars in Libra in their chart do have that kind of pushy quality where they can rub people the wrong way, because their aggression in the sign of harmony, the sign of people getting along and being fair and equal and kind and beautiful, and then there's this sort of aggressive Mars energy poking at everything and pushing it just a little bit more than it wants to be pushed. So that's something that we're reckoning with. The other thing is that all of these planets, right, are in Libra, which is ruled by Venus, and Venus has just recently moved into Sagittarius. So Venus came from Scorpio into Sagittarius, and Scorpio is where we can be a little bit controlling with our relationships, because we have so much fear that we might lose whoever, we might lose something or somebody or whatever it is that's there. But Venus in Sagittarius sort of glosses over. So rather than like being in the pit of despair with all your imagined fears and everything you think the person might be doing, people with Venus and Scorpio might have a lot of fear their partner's cheating, for example. That could be a huge thing with Venus and Scorpio, because they have all these fears. It's a very sexual sign, and it's a controlling sign, right? There's this feeling of like everything's based on sex and control and emotions and all this ups and downs and this, that, and the other. So that can be a big theme. But when you move into Sagittarius, what Venus becomes is a little bit of a spiritual gaslighter. You can see this quality of like overriding anyone. So you're with a partner and maybe they have their Venus in Scorpio or something like that. They have a lot of planets in Scorpio, and they are fearful that you're cheating because you've done, because you've cheated before, or because whatever, there's a trail of some sort that's leading in that direction. And you kind of give them some maxim about how cheating doesn't even exist, how cheating can't even be. There's no such thing as cheating. Something like that, where you're just kind of overriding whatever the human experience is on Earth with some spiritual thought or maxim that that could be true, or maybe is true, but isn't necessarily helpful in that moment when the person is having a human moment, a human need and moment. And that kind of just floats right over their humanness and shuts the door on it, really, and says, well, that's not actually a real experience, and this is what's real. And so this is Venus in Scorpio, or Venus in Sagittarius can really be guilty of this. Venus is also in Mula, which is the root, where we rip out from the roots anything that's not working. There's a volatility in this placement between Scorpio and Sagittarius. So we can also see ourselves using those beliefs, using those ideas we have, sort of rip out anything that's not working in our relationships or our way of relating to other people. So I'm not going to get too much into Jupiter and Saturn this time, because I've spoken for long enough on this video. And I do have the article where I write some of this out, maybe a little bit slightly different take. But I did speak about Jupiter and Saturn quite a bit in my video 2 weeks ago. So you're welcome to look into, like I said, I really hit on Jupiter, Sun, and Mars being in this sort of state of debilitation or combustion, and how those masculine planets really are where we hold our own where we take care of ourselves. It's when we're really taking care of our own self. And the feminine planets are when we start to connect with other people, the moon and Venus. Mercury and Saturn are neutral planets. They don't have a gender charge of any sort. And again, this doesn't have to do with your actual gender. This has to do with the fact that we all have these planets in us, and some of them are more masculine charged, meaning they go out in the world. Some of them are more connective and feminine. And then Mercury is connective because it's communication, or it's disconnective if it's poor communication. But Mercury and Saturn are considered to be neutral gender. They're considered to be, Saturn's the old person. Mercury is a very young person, a childlike energy, and there's a neutrality of gender. And those are the two planets we're really relying on for intelligence right now. Those are the planets that have the intelligence. Mercury has that intelligence being in Libra, although it's going to be affected by this Mars-Sun duo for sure, the fiery element, as I discussed. Saturn is joined a debilitated planet also, right? But it's in its own sign, and it's been there for a really long time. So Saturn's been holding court there since January of 2020. So it's like solidly in his own sign of Capricorn. He's gone retrograde and he's come back again. And he's just like, here to stay and hold the steadfast spot. So our capacity to detach from things, our capacity to see things in a very sort of realistic way, almost a nihilistic way, is what Saturn's bringing to the table. And those two things are keeping us in our truth, in a way, in our capacity to stay neutral despite the sort of ups and downs relationally. And that's really what this masculine planet problem is going to bring, is relational issues, even though, especially this month, because it's in Libra, but it's the relational issues are issues of not taking care of ourselves. Almost all relational issues can be seen within somebody. So of course we do relationship matching, and we can see two people have whatever issues they have with each other, or whatever things that magnetize them towards each other. But at the end of the day, a good astrologer can just look at one person's chart and tell them what's wrong in their relationships. And it's their part. It's what they do in every relationship. It's what they're doing, what they're working on, what that person's thing is. And we each have it. We each have our own downfalls in relationship, or our own things that give us a lift up or help us. And so we don't even need to see the other person's chart to know that about ourselves. And in this period of time, we're putting a lot on the other person, right? We're not taking a lot of responsibility for ourselves. So that's what can go wrong in relationship here. And then, add in that sort of spiritual gaslighty thing with Venus and Sagittarius and the combust Mars and all these other factors. And we, the moon going straight into debilitation right after this new moon. And we can see, there's a lot of places where the connectivity will be disrupted, as well as us not even taking care of ourselves. So not feeling clear in our own vision, which is really what this is about. And so because this new moon is so important and so powerful, and we're really trying to find that light within ourselves. I didn't mention this here, but Diwali there's a number of different myths actually that are attached to this holiday, but one of the more prominent ones is that it's the coming home of Sita and Ram after the long Ramayana, after this long battle with Ravana, the 10-headed monster who kidnaps Sita. They come back to Ayodhya, where Ram is from, and he's finally able to take the throne that he wasn't able to take because of this sad state of affairs with his brother's mother, and this there's a long story there. She had a boon, and she had him cast out. She used her boon with her husband King Dasarata to have Ram cast out to the Dandaka forest, and his brother Bharata put on the throne. But Bharata didn't want to be on the throne. It's a very Sun and Libra type of story. The king didn't want to send his best, his oldest son out to the woods. Bharata didn't even want the throne. Even the mother didn't even come up with it herself. It was her handmaiden who told her to do it. It's this whole sordid tale of everybody taking power from everybody else and choosing not to stand in their own power. And so Ram comes back to this kingdom with with Sita, who is Lakshmi, and Ram is Vishnu. They are the earthly incarnation of these two deities. And Sita then has to prove herself to these town people because she's been with Ravana. She was kidnapped and she was kept in his garden. And so they don't believe that she was faithful to Ram. They think she's been tainted now that she's been with Ravana. So she has to prove herself by sitting in a fire. And it's like, well, okay, if you can stay, if you don't get touched by the flames, then you're pure and you can come back and be our queen. But Sita does that. She sits in the fire and she doesn't get burned, and they still don't believe her. Even with her proving whatever ridiculous thing they wanted to prove, they still don't believe her. And Vishnu and Lakshmi have to wait till they go back to the Devaloka, to the place of the gods, before they can be together again. So it's this whole story of that really represents a lot of the astrology that I'm just talking about. And Ram coming home, though, is said to be the return of the light, the return of the true king back onto his throne. And we have to do that inside ourselves, despite whatever stuff on the outside doesn't feel aligned or right, even, some great injustice that we have to face. And yet we still have to find our power in that, and not own the reality that other people can even take our power. Because as soon as we own that reality, we misunderstand power, and we treat something as power that's not power. That's permission. That's not power. That's when we give people permission to do things. We say, okay, you have the authority to do that, but that's not power. Power and authority are not quite the same. They can have something in common, but true authority, inner authority, power is just there, just like the sun is always there. Just like no matter which way the earth turns, no matter where you're standing on the earth, no matter what time of day it is where you live, no matter what time of year it is where you live, the sun is there. It's just us that are moving and seeing things from different perspectives. Our power is always there, whether or not we can see it, whether or not we can experience it, whether or not we can live it, whether or not we can hold it, whether or not we can emanate it. It's there. We just have to understand that. And so that's a lot of the light we are finding here on this new moon in Diwali. And so I will leave you by just saying that I am doing a special for the month of November into December 4th. So by 12 a.m. on December 4th, Hawaii time, which is again GMT -10, I am offering a special on 30-minute readings for people so they can get a really strong idea of what's coming to culmination for them in these eclipses, because it is coming into eclipse season, and this particular new moon has so many places where we're selling ourselves out. I really want to offer people help in lighting their own candle and knowing what path they're on and what they're doing. So these 30-minute readings are by recording. I do an audio recording and email it to you. The time frame will depend on how many people sign up, because I'm not going to cap the number that I accept. It's just the time of when it will get finished might be pushed back a little. But the special is that it's going to be for $50. It's usually $65 for these 30-minute readings. And the other thing that's special about it is I'm offering them to everyone. Generally speaking, I only do 30-minute readings for previous clients. I don't usually offer 30-minute readings for new people. So whether or not I've read your natal chart before, you can get this 30-minute special, and the focus will be heavily on what these transits are bringing to you, this eclipse axis and this new moon moving into that eclipse axis, and what you're needing to learn here. What's the meat of what you need to learn, and in what area of your life, and how to navigate that. So if you're interested in that, you can PM me on Facebook or Instagram, DM on Instagram, PM on Facebook, or you can visit my website and contact me from that page at www.radhahomeyoga.com. Have a blessed Diwali and new moon, and I'll see you soon. Aloha.